The Resident Evil 4 Knife Only challenge is a challenge that I've been dreading for almost a year. I've been terrified, endlessly putting it off, praying that you all would forget about it. But you know what? You never did. To this day, you guys still haven't forgotten, no matter how many videos I've done and no matter how much time has passed. I've constantly been reminded, haunted by the promise I failed to keep last year. So I think it's finally time. It's time I stepped up as a man, jumped back into the world of Resident Evil 4, and kept that promise I made so long ago. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dante, what makes the Knife Only challenge so hard? It sounds pretty simple to me, and I'd agree, it is pretty simple. But that doesn't mean it's easy. See, not only is the knife not infinite like it was in the original, it also breaks so easily you might as well consider it a butter knife. Pair this with the fact that I was playing on the absolute hardest difficulty, and my god, I was just asking for a bad time. So then, this begs the question, can the new Resident Evil 4 Remake be beaten knife only? Or will I be forced to use guns during my little adventure? Will the durability of my knife be enough to get through my mission, or will a certain boss during the adventure ruin my plans? And why the hell is Lewis in such a goofy outfit? Sit back, relax, and let me take you on one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had. I don't exactly remember when I lost contact with her, but it had been enough time for me to assume that something terrible had happened. Of course, being the one who sent her out in the first place, I'd felt responsible, and though I shouldn't have cared about the girl's fate, there I was, being escorted through one of Spain's many dark forests in search of her. But of course, that wasn't quite true. What I was really in search of was one thing, and one thing only. The Amber. It was the only way for me to achieve the total global saturation I had so badly yearned for, and there was nothing in the village that was going to stop me. My journey began in the back of a Spanish police cruiser, and though the two men in the front were technically there to help me, I was less than satisfied with the way they talked about the mission. From what I had gathered, it sounded like they thought the whole thing was a joke. Not that I could blame them, of course. They were just common peasants without the will to conquer the world. It wasn't a surprise. A few hours into our drive, the boys finally let me off at my destination, and it was there everything started. My mission was to find a person that I could question about my colleague's disappearance. Anyone would do, really. So I pushed on through that ominous forest until I eventually came to a cute little house at the end of the path. Not knowing if anyone was home, I made my way inside. Although the place was shabby and disgusting, the lights inside were on, so I knew that there was a good chance somebody was in there. It was just a question of finding them. Upon making my way into the kitchen, I was jump scared by a strange old man who didn't seem to care that I just trespassed into his home. I was also jump scared by how thick Wesker's ass was, but let's not talk about that. Instead, let's focus on my conversation with the old man. I tried asking the man about my colleague, but he didn't seem to speak English. So, I tried communicating with him the only other way I knew how. It didn't work. Alright, this was clearly a waste of time. It was time to go. Before I was able to make my way out of that geriatrics residence, though, something on the floor caught my eye. It was the bloodied ID of a cop. Wait a minute, I knew that man. These people, they were all crazy. All I wanted was a little info on my missing colleague, and that's how I was treated? It was insane. Blasphemous even. If that was how things were gonna be, I was more than happy to go sicko mode. It was in that moment I decided that the entire village of innocent people would pay for this one man's mistakes. Still, there was something to be happy about. You know that fly swatter I used to protect myself with? Yeah. That thing was insane. Not only was it powerful as hell, but the durability was unlike anything I'd ever seen. This would be my weapon, and it would be the key to achieving my goals. I pressed on, making my way through the forest until I came across a nearby village. It was so peaceful there, and was just a cute little village overall. The men over there were hard at work, chickens grazed wherever they pleased, and there was this cute old lady who I killed on sight. Ain't no way I was taking any chances here. For all I knew, these people were as crazy as Billy Joe back there. I was essentially defending myself. Of course, it wasn't long before the entire village became aware of my presence, and they all started freaking out, talking about how the old lady I killed was the sweetest little thing in the world, and that Billy Joe was a violent village outcast that they didn't even associate with. Sounded like lies to me. I started going hog wild on these people. Unfortunately, though, they were a lot tougher than they looked, so it seemed my only good option was to hole up in a nearby house. As bad as the situation was, I felt pretty safe there, and oh my god, is that Big Smoke? Oh, hell no. I had to get the hell out of here. For the next 5 minutes, I ran around that village like a complete maniac, never knowing if the people chasing me would ever give up. They were relentless, and their bloodthirst was unquenchable. I'd expect nothing less from a village full of monsters. Clearly, I'd only killed that disgusting old woman in self-defense. Couldn't these lobotomites see that? Right before I was about to meet my maker, the nearby church bell rang, catching the villagers in a trance and freeing me from their torment. I didn't know what the hell was happening, but I wasn't about to question it. Big Smoke wasn't able to get his prize this time, but I knew he'd be back for me eventually. I could just smell it on him. Hunnigan contacted me after the whole village incident, and she told me that my target was holed up in some nearby church. A church, eh? Then that meant I had to get through that door, but where was the key? Well, there was only one way to go. Might as well check it out.
chocolate?
Oh my god! I jammed that directly into his heart! To be honest, I was starting to feel a little bad about killing these poor people. I mean, sure, they started it, but they were just trying to get by, right? I mean, wouldn't I do the same thing if I were in their shoes? Of course, though, the strong morality I felt in my heart didn't really matter much. I was too deep in it now. I simply had no choice but to continue my rampage. And continue it, I most certainly did. Nothing could stop me. Not even a man in a ridiculous outfit? Brother, what are you wearing? Is this some kind of joke? Unfortunately for me, I had unknowingly walked into the lion's den, and before I knew it, a man with massive nipples appeared out of nowhere and threw me against the wall. That was a bit too much for my little body to take, so sadly, I passed out. That was the moment I got infected with Los Polos Hermanos, a deadly disease that gave you an obsessive compulsion to want to open multiple chain restaurants. It was truly terrible. I woke up a few hours later in some dingy old basement, and that weirdo from the sack just so happened to be tied up with me. Not wanting anything to do with that freak, I tried my best to break out of my chains, but the man, apparently named Luis Serra, told me that it wasn't what it looked like. He told me that he wasn't dressed up like that because he enjoyed it. No. You see, the villagers had actually forced the costume on him as a way to ridicule and embarrass him. Huh. Seemed like a stretch to me, but he didn't really have any reason to lie to me, so I chose to believe him. Then, out of nowhere, some psychopath with a hatchet came at us. I saved Lewis's life. We choked the guy out, and after some hijinks, I was left all alone to fend for myself. Yeah, real classy, Lewis. I swore if I ever saw that guy again, I'd spank his ass red with my fly swatter. Speaking of which, I was completely unarmed. It looked like I'd have to use an actual knife to progress. Oh no. Oh, that was just horrible. I'd get blood all over my expensive suit. I killed him, did some ninjutsu on him, cranked the crank, and slipped my way under the door, leading me directly to my possessions. Thankfully, everything was there, including my trusty old fly swatter. But just wait right there. There's something I haven't mentioned yet. See those little knives in my inventory? The cute ittle baby ones? Those guys are more important than anything. See, my fly swatter is strong, but is it strong enough to take on that? I mean that? I highly doubt it. So basically, these little guys would be my insurance, meaning it was imperative for me to collect and save as many of them as possible. Under no circumstances could they be used. The next area really wasn't that bad. I took some people out, grabbed the medallion, and bounced out of there. Honestly, the adventure so far had been pretty simple. I was really surprised at how easy everything had been. The villagers fell to just a few of my swats, and although my fly swatter hadn't even been fully upgraded at that point, I was doing just fine. Oh, Jesus Christ! Oh, stay away from me, you psychopath! Help! No! Ah! By a miracle of our Lord and Savior, I was somehow able to juke Big Smoke around some boxes and hightailed it out of there. Ain't no way I was getting paid enough to fight that. I ended up making my way into some nearby house and hid, waiting for my inevitable doom. But after a few minutes, it looked like the coast was clear. Huh. Must have lost him. Still though, I knew he'd be back. He always came back. And next time, he wouldn't be so lucky. Mark my words. So yeah, I killed the poor owner of the house I was in, robbed him of everything he owned, and even found a key upstairs. And just my luck, it was the key to the door I was looking for. Perfect. Oh God, oh no, please. Ah!
Don't do it to me. I beg you. No.
Please let me go. What's happening? Ah! Having scared the nipple monster away with nothing but my bravery and masculinity, I left that place for good. And you wouldn't believe what I found on my way out. It was a Pokemon. Whoa! Luckily, I always kept a Pokeball on me for times like these. Oh, Jesus, what the hell? Well, I guess that's what happens when you buy your Pokeballs from Wish, huh? After that, I made my way back to the village, stuck my way over to the door, unlocked it, and made my way inside. There wasn't anything special in the house itself, but when I made my way out and got to the end of a short path, I finally came across the place I'd been searching for since the very beginning. The church. The only problem was, it was locked. So, without any better options, I continued down the only other path available to me. Of course, the villagers didn't make this easy on me, and I unfortunately had no other choice but to increase my kill count, but overall, I'd say it was smooth sailing. At one point, I even became a god at dodging, and I really started to wonder why these pathetic plebeians were even trying. Clearly, I was on a whole other level compared to them. With the stress of the mission and the fear of being alone heavy on my mind, I've realized I needed a little something to let loose. So, I sinned. I did the shooting range. But hold on, before you get your panties up in a bunch, listen to me. The merchant was offering limited edition Pokemon charms. Do you really think I was gonna pass something like that up? Hell no. I got a lot of cool characters through that first machine, but ultimately, I decided to go with Team Rocket, Snorlax, and Drowsy charms. And just look at how cool they are. Yes, I have the mind of a 7-year-old, okay? What are you gonna do about it? By the way, these charms didn't help me out in any way, so you don't have to worry about that. For some reason, the edge of the lake was calling to me. Something inside of my soul was telling me that the only way forward was across it. So I jumped down the ladder and was faced with a bathtub? Huh? I mean, are you kidding me? What is this? Oh, whatever. What's the worst that can happen? Oh, Jesus Christ, there was another Pokemon? What was this, Pal World? Unfortunately, I only had one Pokeball for this adventure, and that was already used up. With no other alternatives, I was forced to exterminate the Pokemon in front of me. Now, yes, harpoons technically aren't knives, but there was nothing else I could do, buddy. What you gonna do, sue me? After collapsing from the stress of having to kill such a magnificent creature, I woke up a few hours later in that dingy bathtub boat and was surprised to see that it was already dark out. Hopefully, that wouldn't make my mission any harder, and Oh, Jesus Christ! Plog enemies were my one weakness in this challenge. Not only were they sporadic and tough as hell, they also took most of my health out with a single swing, so naturally, I decided the best course of action was to run. It was in the next area I finally came across the key to the church. It seemed the key needed other keys in order for the key to function as a key, so I went around all of the areas of the lake gathering supplies, avoiding enemies, and grabbing the puzzle pieces I'd be needing for later. I also collected a whole heap of chicken poop and fishy boys for later because on the professional difficulty, I knew I'd be needing everything I could get my hands on. I was even able to fully upgrade my fly swatter at this point, which was pretty sick. Everything seemed to be falling into place, and with the church key in my possession at last, I was feeling invincible. That is, until the cruel reality of my situation slapped me across the face. There I was, minding my own business and on my way to save my colleague, when all of a sudden, I found myself trapped in a cage. Now, I was there thinking, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna sick some dogs on me? Maybe Big Smoke was finally planning to get even? Whoa, hey, calm down there. What's going on? Oh, Jesus Christ! My God, it was El Monkey, the thickest boy in all the realms. I was expected to fight this voluptuous beast all by myself, with nothing but a fly swatter. Like a dirty little pervert, I immediately went for the guy's balls. It wasn't a guaranteed strategy, nor was it one I personally wanted to go for, but with my puny 5'11" stature, I didn't have a lot of options. I went at him hard, slapping his balls around with the tiny fly swatter in my hand, and when that stopped being a viable option, I started slapping his butt cheeks as hard as I could. The blood of his nether region shot out across my face, and although I should have been grossed out by it, I think I was actually getting more riled up because of it. With the exclusive upgrade I had gotten from the merchant just a few minutes before the battle, I was clapping those cheeks at lightning speed, and at a certain point, I realized that I had caught the massive gorilla in an endless loop. I'd slap at his balls for a few seconds, he'd get angry and try to stomp me, I'd dodge, and I'd rinse and repeat. This was all well and good, and actually worked wonderfully, until the damn dog I saved earlier showed up. He literally got me killed instantly. Oh yeah, that's real nice, buddy, thanks for that. So I jumped back into the battle, slapped his balls around some more, worked hard at the dog to bring that monster to his knees, and after a few more slaps, El Monkey was defeated. Hell yeah! And I barely even used up any of my healing. What a good fight. As happy as I was about winning, I couldn't help but feel a looming dread in my heart. That man had been defeated, sure, but it wasn't easy. In fact, it was pretty difficult to defeat him the way I did. And like I mentioned earlier, my fly swatter was now fully upgraded, meaning as the adventure went on, it'd only be getting weaker and weaker against the enemies I'd be facing. Would I even have enough durability for future boss fights? This wasn't good. Trying to avoid thinking about that future problem, I trudged on. The person I had been looking for since the beginning was likely waiting for me in that church, so there was no time to waste. I threw the key into the lock, made my way inside, did some easy as hell puzzle, and scurried up to the top floor. And when I did, I couldn't believe my damn eyes. It was Ada. I'd finally found her. I was so happy to see her. I was angry. Ada was just a big dumb idiot, getting caught and locked up as a prisoner instead of acquiring the amber like I hired her for. I let her know how brain dead she was and told her that if she didn't do exactly as I said from here on out, I'd slap her ass red with my fly swatter. Not knowing what to say, she just nodded. And so began my escort mission. Now, any rookie cop out there would have taken Ada to safety as quickly as possible and continued the mission on their own. But I wasn't like those other guys. What mattered to me more than anything else was the amber. Securing it came first. Unfortunately, Ada knew nothing of its current location, but she did say that Louis Sarah was the last one in possession of it. It was a weak lead, but it was all we had to go on. It was worth a shot. I boosted Ada onto a nearby ladder, tried to get a good look up her dress as she climbed, it didn't work, and made my way back outside via an attic window. Ada seemed to be a little more apprehensive about jumping, probably because she was wearing high heels, so she asked me to catch her. I mean, come on. Was that really the best choice for a world-ending mission like this? I was beginning to see why Ada had failed me. Anyway, we made our way to the front courtyard, I killed a disgusting old lady, and from that point, I decided that stealth was the way to go. Surprisingly, it worked out, and Ada and I were out of there in a hurry. We continued making our way through the village, gathering supplies, taking out enemies when necessary, and running when there was no other options. We were kind of like chickens, running around with our heads cut off, but it's not like we had any better options. Lewis was out there somewhere, but that somewhere could have been anywhere. Well, it looked like God was on my side, because when we found ourselves being chased by half of the village, the man we were looking for appeared to us on the other side of a bridge and invited us into his house. He was still dressed up in that goofy outfit though, so after making it to safety, I pinned the guy up against the wall and asked him what the hell he was doing. That costume was a way for the villagers to mock him, right? Why hadn't he changed out of it yet? Flustered, Lewis told me that he just didn't have time yet, and that as soon as he had a moment to spare, he'd get right on it. I thought that was real suspicious, but we didn't have time to argue about it. The villagers were on our tail and Ada needed protecting. We quickly hid her in the walls and prepared for battle. Now, the cabin fight was brutal. Not only was I damn near defenseless, being equipped with only a fly swatter, the enemies who decided to join the party were ruthless. I mean, trying to attack them without getting hit was actually impossible. Like a cornered rat, I camped on top of the stairs and swatted away. This actually seemed to work for a bit, but Lewis really needed my help downstairs, so I went down there to help my boy out. Enemy after enemy came at me as I desperately tried to defend myself, and then the Plagas began spawning. As if this wasn't hard enough already. Sadly, I had no good way of avoiding these guys' attacks. All I could really do was just tank their hits as I slapped at them as fast as I could. And when the big cowman showed up, oh buddy, things were just getting worse and worse. As my knife durability dwindled, as Lewis got ganged up on, it looked like my adventure was coming to an end. I guess world domination was just a fool's dream after all. But then, Ada suddenly burst into the room and told us that there was a way out. It was a miracle. So trusting her word, Lewis and I got out of there. And to my surprise, Ada knew exactly what she was talking about. We had survived the cabin fight. Now then, on to more important things. The amber. I questioned Lewis about it. Where was it? Did he have it on him? Clearly flustered, Lewis told me that a man by the name of Krauser was currently in possession of it, and that if I was lucky, I could find him in a nearby castle. Oh, wait. That castle? The one I'd seen back on the lake? That place looked like an absolute death trap. The amber was in there? However, Lewis didn't stop there. He told us that he had a warning to give us, and that when we eventually met Krauser, we may be a little surprised. You see, Krauser apparently enjoyed running around in the nude, and more likely than not, at this very moment, he was running around with his little Peter flapping in the wind. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Clearly this man had a screw loose, and he was the one who was in possession of the amber? Dear God. Although things weren't looking good, Lewis told me that he'd help us to the best of his ability, no matter what. At the time, I didn't quite understand why he was being so nice to us. I mean, we were complete strangers. But because his actions were going to end up benefiting me in the long haul, I accepted his help. We decided it was best to split up, and so the journey to find the amber continued. With a new destination in mind, Ada and I headed for the castle. We were making some decent progress, and our destination wasn't looking too far off. But unfortunately, when I went to grab the lever for a locked door outside, I found myself being attacked by two lovely women who desperately wanted a piece of my thick-ass bubble butt. Normally, I'd be flattered, but because the women were kind of disgusting looking, I didn't want to have anything to do with them. No offense to ugly people. Spoiler alert, although this section looks like it'd be harder than the cabin, it was actually a million times easier. Why? Well, because of the invisible barriers. Now, sure, I could have done this fight honorably and impressed all of you guys, but why would I do that when I could just lure the old hags to the edge of the map where they couldn't do anything as I slowly whittled them down with my fly swatter? I was a supervillain, baby. I didn't have honor. A few minutes later, both chainsaw ladies were dead and we were out of there. I thought things were going pretty well and I was excited to finally get to the castle, but when Mr. Nipples showed up and politely asked me to hand over Ada, I acted instantly. Oh, Jesus Christ, that's gotta hurt. Mr. Nipples didn't seem to appreciate my unprovoked attack, so instead of discussing things like gentlemen, he chose to take Ada by force. Not letting that happen so easily, we booked it, and upon making it to an unstable bridge, it looked like we had escaped the guy by pure luck. But really, I knew he'd be back for us soon enough. After all, I'd embarrassed him in front of all of his friends. There was no coming back from that. Ada and I made our way over to the merchant, bought as many supplies as we could carry, and hurried up into the nearby warehouse. Of course, Mr. Nipples had tracked us to that exact warehouse, and so after nearly shattering my entire skeletal system, the final battle began. Without any good way to fight him, I resorted to name calling. I told him that his pepperoni nipples were actually disgusting, and that his head was so goddamn bald, my $500 sunglasses couldn't even contain the shine. I was praying that saying those things would be all I needed to win the fight, but unsurprisingly, he was completely unfazed by my insults. Damn it! What else could I do? Oh, wow! A barrel magically exploded out of nowhere! It wasn't like I shot at it or anything. Anyway, it was here my skills were truly tested. Now, I'm not gonna lie, Mr. Nipples' first phase was easier than his mother. All I did was stick to his butt cheeks as I slapped them raw, and after a few minutes of this, the guy couldn't handle it anymore. He was now into his second phase, the phase where he was impossible to reach. As I sat there, taking punishment after punishment, I wondered if there was any way to do this. I mean, the guy was an absolute monster. The flames from the explosion creeped up closer and closer as the battle moved on, threatening to melt the only weapon I had on me. And as Mr. Nipples pelted me with his flaming boards, I finally accepted my fate. But beating me in that way just wasn't enough for the moron. He leaped forward and started trying to slap me around with his tentacles. And guess what? This was the perfect opportunity for me to strike. Sure, he didn't do it too often and my healing items were dwindling, but at least it was workable. And so, after lots and lots of patience, that nipple monster was finally defeated, and without any obstacles to worry about, Ada and I were free to go to the castle. We made our way down a long, winding road until we eventually came to the castle's doorstep, and it was there the search for Krauser began. Lewis had told us he was somewhere around here, so without any better leads to go on, we went with the path that was right in front of us. Before going though, I decided to do a bit of an impromptu workout to prepare for what was ahead, and for whatever reason, Ada started freaking out. Was it because of my loud grunting, or was it because she was intimidated by my raw, unapologetic masculinity? Who knows? When I got to the merchant, I bought some first aid spray, tuned up my fly swatter, and sold the rest of the treasures I'd collected in the village. The one good thing about this challenge was that money was never really an issue. Of course, there was nothing to use that money on, but at least when the time came, I knew I'd always be good. As we made our way deep into the passages of the castle, I started to realize that there was a huge problem coming up. And that, of course, was the catapults. I had no way of destroying them, and useless Ada was going to be following behind me the entire time. Oh boy. So, yeah, this part was fun. Between getting my skin burned off, having to constantly attend to Ada's pathetic little panic attacks, and getting absolutely annihilated by the boys on the catapult, I just couldn't get enough. By some miracle of the Lord, I was eventually able to make my way through it, but my god did it ever take a toll on me. I mean, I couldn't even aim the cannon without being bombarded from 50 different directions. Anyway, we made our way out. I bought the stingray from the merchant, for reasons you do not need to know. And then a little man by the name of Ramon Salazar introduced himself to us. Apparently, he was madly in love with Ada, and if I didn't send her over to him that instant, he was gonna make me play Fiddlemaster for all of the boys in the castle like some sloppy little slave. I didn't really understand why he was so obsessed with such a pathetic, incapable woman, but because I'd already gone out of my way to save her, I didn't really feel like giving her up. And so, I risked slobbering on zombie meat for the rest of my life in an attempt to save my partner. Ramon didn't take too kindly to this, and he sicked his boys on us. Not wanting to have anything to do with that, I made a big circle around the room as I herded them like sheep. Quickly vaulted Ada over a nearby wall, and when she unlocked the door from the other side, we escaped without so much as a scratch. Things were looking good, and I was feeling pretty confident, until the floor collapsed beneath me and I plunged headfirst into the castle's dungeon. There, a terrifying monster was waiting for me, and he wanted my ass so bad, it hurt. Luckily for me though, the guy was completely blind, so a few sneak attacks later, and the guy was still alive. And my fly swatter was broken now. Uh-oh. Now, remember, this was my fly swatter at full power, and for whatever reason, it couldn't even take out a single Gyarados without breaking. That in itself wasn't a big issue since I could just use all the knives I'd collected on my journey so far, but still, with everything I'd been through, I'd only been able to collect 8 of them. And because they were so much weaker than my fly swatter, they weren't a good tool to rely on. They were a precious commodity, only to be used in case of the most dire of emergencies. In that moment, it felt like everything I'd done to make it to that point was for nothing. Was my mission crumbling in on itself? No, I had to retry, but this time with a better strategy. So I started the fight over, but this time instead of sneak attacking the guy, I went for manual attacks. Of course, this was a lot more dangerous and I got slapped around a decent amount, but I couldn't just throw away my backup knives like they were nothing. I had to do what I had to do. I started to map out the Gyarados patterns and slowly whittled the guy down. I'd sneak behind him for a bit, waiting for my time to strike, then I'd pounce like a cat, slapping his exposed parasite over and over until he went to attack me. Then I'd hide, wait for him to calm down, and the process would repeat like that. There were a few slip-ups here and there, and overall it was a pretty tough battle, but I wasn't defeated so easily. The Gyarados fell over dead, and I still had over half of my fly swatter durability left. That just goes to show how much durability is lost on stab attacks. It's really not worth it. When I made it out of that disgusting crypt, I was happy to see that Ada was alive and well. We continued on, making it to a puzzle room, and it was here that for the very first time since the challenge began, I was forced to use something other than my fly swatter. There was simply no other way to activate the medallions without a gun. Now, sure, could I have used a glitch to skip through the door beneath Salazar's balcony, avoiding this use of a gun? Absolutely. But because there were a few more instances of gun uses coming up, I didn't think it was worth it. So, I shot the medallions, we gathered some more supplies, and we ended up coming to the room I'd been dreading for a long time. The water room. This was gonna be painful. I knew that running in there head first without a plan was gonna be a recipe for disaster. So, using the biggest part of my brain, I fell back on the biggest exploit this game had to offer, the aggro zone. Like the Chainsaw Twin area, the water room had a buffer zone that, when crossed, enemies would de-aggro and run back with their tails tucked between their legs. This would allow me to single out a lone target, and although they weren't completely harmless, it was a lot more manageable than trying to fight 50 people at once. I also ended up using Ada as bait, since when she was picked up, I could insta-kill her kidnapper. This would also eliminate the possibility of a Plaga spawning, which was pretty huge. With access to the merchant never being a problem, the entire first floor of the water room was slowly and methodically wiped out. I couldn't believe how easy this was. Unfortunately though, I still wasn't able to get rid of the crossbowers, but because turning the crank was pretty fast, I was able to get to the second floor without any problems.
Those crossbowers paid dearly for all of the cheap shots they tried to get on me.
Half of the room was done. I couldn't believe it, but don't worry. The next part would bend me over and do horrible things to me. See, I had no choice but to rely on Ada to make it across the room, and my god, what a nightmare it was, with no way to protect her. She just got kidnapped over and over and over again. It was like she had worms in her brain or something. Defend yourself, moron! Christ, I don't even know why I ended up choosing her for this mission in the first place. It looked like the challenge truly ended here. Sure, I'd failed already with the fish boy earlier, but I mean, harpoons were kind of like knives, right? They weren't that far off, so you could cut me some slack there. But here, it looked like my only option was to take these boys out with a gun. It was over. But hold on. I've been keeping a secret from all of you since the very beginning. See my inventory? What do you notice? Oh, it's full of flashes, huh? That's right. I've been saving up every single flash I came across on my journey for this very moment. And as those disgusting castle dwellers made their way over to my Ada, I knew it was now or never. Of course, flashes weren't knives, but at the same time, it wasn't like I was harming the enemies in any way. In my eyes, it was fair game. Still, there was a problem. See that right there? That's right. Ada gets blinded too. For some strange reason, she doesn't close her eyes when I throw my flashes, which basically makes them useless. Are you goddamn kidding me? All of my preparation, all of my big brain maneuvers, and this pathetic little worm dared to ruin my plans? But then, I've remembered something. I always carried an extra pair of sunglasses with me in case of emergencies, and now was the perfect time to use them. I handed my extra pair off to Ada, sent her back up to the cranks, and began flashing. And guess what? It worked. It did end up taking me over half an hour, and I used about 11 flashes in total, but hey, we were victorious, baby. Unfortunately, though, this was all a little much for Ada to handle. She collapsed into my arms, and when my guard was let down, she swiped my fly swatter. Then suddenly, she had a knife. What the hell? When did that happen? She threatened to off herself if I didn't pay her in full, even though she'd already failed the mission. Dumbstruck, I told her that I wasn't gonna pay some moron, some absolute lobotomite who couldn't even defend herself against a pig. Before she could do anything too hasty, a gate raised up between us, officially splitting us up. And for whatever reason, Ada ran away crying. Oh, that's just great. As if I didn't have enough on my plate. Why was Ada so goddamn brainless? I should have left her in that church to rot. Although I'd lost Ada, which was less than ideal, in her place, I gained something much more valuable. The body armor. This was huge. Since I was drowning in doubloons that just couldn't be used on anything but fly swatter repairs and first aid sprays, having another item at my disposal was a big deal. I mean, it pretty well doubled the damage I could take. I contacted Hunnigan to let her know the details of my situation, and to my surprise, she flipped out on me, saying that I was a moron for letting Ada go off on her own. Honestly, being called horrible names like that kind of hurt. It wasn't my fault she'd up and left out of nowhere. She just randomly had a Vietnam flashback out of nowhere and decided that threatening me for money was the way to go. How was I responsible for that? Apparently, that didn't matter to Hunnigan. She told me that my #1 priority was to find Ada, even if Krauser himself stepped in front of me at that very moment. Whatever, dude. It wasn't like I had a lead on Krauser anyway. I guess it wouldn't hurt to go looking for her. Feeling much more confident with my new equipment, I pressed on, defeating the red-robed freak in the next room with ease and moving on to the next area. But something wasn't right. There was someone in this room with me. Someone I knew.
You can stop right there.
Oh my god. Bella? It was my ex-girlfriend, looking as disgusting as I remembered. I asked her what she was doing here, but unsurprisingly, she wasn't willing to give up any information. However, she did want some information from me, and rather than asking politely, she threatened me. Sensing I wouldn't get out of there alive if I didn't act quick, I attacked her, swinging my fly swatter around at lightning speed. Unfortunately for Bella, I was a bit too quick on the draw and had her just where I wanted her. The fight was over. She took the opportunity to taunt me, asking me if I'd spank her for being naughty. Ew! What? Jesus Christ, I was about to throw up. She then let me know that Ada, and my mission as a whole, was a lost cause, and that if I were smart, I'd leave while I still could. So, I told her to piss off.
Right.
With that fiasco out of the way, I made it over to the Armored Gigante, and honestly, this section was pretty easy. You may think I had to shoot the guy with the cannon or something, but no, I didn't have to do that. I just aimed at the castle door, let off a shot, and booked it. In the next room, I was reunited with Ada again, but rather than hugging her and telling her that everything was going to be okay, or giving her some heartfelt speech about how everyone made mistakes and that I forgave her, I gave her the cold shoulder. That's right, I didn't say a damn word to her. I was not a man to be messed with, and I wanted her to realize that. Shortly after that, we found ourselves in a dog maze, and although it was a little spooky, speedrunning it seemed to be the way to go. Easy peasy, lemony squeezy. You'd think that since everything seemed to be going right for me, I'd be happy with the progress we'd made so far, but you'd be wrong. Next up was the night room and the Alialas Plagas room, and I didn't want any part of it. So, instead of doing that, I chilled out and did some more gambling. Yeah, baby! Give me something good! Give me something good! Come on! Yeah! Woo! Out of the two terrible rooms coming up, I decided to go with the Plaga room first. My thinking was, hey, might as well get the easier of the two rooms out of the way, right? No! Look at this! Ada was being kidnapped by a goddamn ghost. I mean, Jesus Christ, could I have a break? I had enough to deal with already. I left Ada alone to figure out her own problems and went to take out the guy in the red robe. This didn't end so well. So, alright then, if these people didn't want to play fair, I wouldn't play fair either. I used the Ada bait strat to get some insta-kills, turned to the crank securing our escape route, avoided some Plaga on the way, grabbed the goat head, and got out of there. I failed a few times, but overall, I'd say I did a pretty good job. With the goat and snake head secured, we only needed one more, and that was in the night room. In that moment, I prayed to the Lord, asking, begging for his protection. I knew the night room would be brutal, and I needed all the help I could get. When the battle started, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Because of my lightning-fast reflexes, I was doing a lot of damage. Sometimes the Knight's Plagas were hard to hit, and I was wasting a lot of my Fly Swatter's durability on their armor, but as long as I spammed my slaps with good enough aim, I'd end up doing enough damage to stun the guys. Night after night fell, and it looked like my victory was assured. That is, until I got stun-locked and insta-killed. Upset with myself for dying when I got so far, I hopped into the arena again, and this time, I made sure my health was so full that even if I did end up getting stun-locked, I'd be completely safe. And guess what? I freaking did it, man. The night room was complete on my second try. I could not believe it. Damn, dude, what was I even worried about? This challenge was so easy. But don't forget, the double Gyarados room was coming up next. Oh boy. I helped Ada down from the balcony, collected an adorable pet rat that got itself trapped in a vase, called him William, and we placed all three heads into the statue puzzle. And then we were ambushed! Enemies flooded into the room from all angles, and when a massive golden gate separated me from my partner, I told her to run. Because she was such a moron, she'd probably end up getting captured anyway, but that didn't mean we were just gonna sit there like brain-dead amoebas and give up. I did my best to fight the unfortunate souls who made their way into my cage, and oh my god, brother, that has got to hurt. Oh, poor lad. That's superhuman strength for you, I guess. For the next section, I played as Ada, and god damn, did she have a brain? She was holding the lantern sideways like a gun. Come on now, Ada. Don't tell me you traded away all of your intelligence points for attraction points. So yeah, Ada made her way to the basement, grabbed a piece of the puzzle, brought it back upstairs, and saved my damn life. Of course, she got kidnapped immediately after that because why the hell not? But hey, I could give credit where credit was due. She did a good job. For once. I guess I'd go looking for her. Next up on the list was the bug room, and it was easy. I mean, look at this. Look at the way I'm humiliating them. It was completely pathetic. I could have made it through that room with my eyes closed. The double Gyarados room, on the other hand, was a completely different matter. Sadly, I had to use my gun again to lower the drawbridge over there, and when I stepped foot into that place, I was already willing to cry out for my mommy. The battle began, and it was brutal. Not only did I have to worry about two psychotic Gyarados, I also had to worry about the massive group of enemies who were coming at me with everything they had. Thankfully, the Gyarados did most of the work for me when it came to clearing out the small enemies, but still, that didn't mean it made my job any easier. My dodging skills needed to be perfect here. By the end of it all, it was just me and the two Gyarados, and I was completely stumped. Remember that Gyarados I fought in the prison basement earlier? The one who used up all my Fly Swatter's durability before I could even defeat him? Yeah. I was facing the same problem here. Not only were the Gyarados Plagas super unpredictable when it came to landing a hit, when I did get hit in, the other Gyarados would hear and immediately come charging over. I really did not have enough health items for this nightmare, and as I got slapped around over and over, my patience was starting to wear thin. I died again and again, never really being able to perfect my attacks. The way my pathetic excuse of a body used the Fly Swatter was super random, so sometimes I'd end up hitting the Plaga, and other times I'd completely fail and get slapped as a punishment for my mistakes. Still, I didn't give up. Although this section seemed nearly impossible with two Gyarados coming at me, I knew that if I focused on the weaker of the two and got him out of the game first, I could take the other guy out no problem. So, I focused, committing to attack after attack until finally the weaker of the two fell over dead. And thank God for that. It wasn't long before the second one joined him. As great as the future was looking, I had to admit, I was in a bit of a rough spot. See, I was completely out of healing items, and I ended up having to use one of my kitchen knives on the guy. Yeah, I was starting to get a little worried. In the next room, Ramon's lackey caught me by surprise, and before I could even ask what the hell was going on, I was thrown into the endless abyss. Oh, well, GG. It looked like it was the end for me, until I conveniently spotted a chain and grabbed that thing like an absolute Chad. Oh! Oh! Brother, he's not even wearing gloves! That's gotta hurt! I mean, I know Wesker's superhuman, but still. I made my way through those sewers, killing some bugs along the way, acquiring a beautiful crown, and even finding the merchant in some random back room. I sold him nearly everything I owned and prepared for the battle of a lifetime. And by that, I mean that I prepared for the cardio of a lifetime, because ain't no way in hell I was fighting that guy with nothing but a fly swatter. As scary as the Verdugo was, all I really had to do was run in circles until the elevator arrived. And so, I did that, escaping at the very last minute and shaking my ass in celebration. My celebration was cut short though, because all of a sudden, the Los Polos in me was starting to awaken.
Hello, and welcome to the Los Pollos Hermanos family.
Oh, get out of my head. I was on the verge of death until I was partnered up with the weird alien furry fanboy again. Right when I thought things couldn't get any worse. Lewis ended up giving me a dose of medicine to stop the fatal disease from spreading. I was thankful, of course, but that didn't mean I suddenly trusted this weirdo either. He was clearly hiding something from me, and I was gonna get to the bottom of it. I headed over to the merchant and repaired my body armor, also taking a look at what I had to work with. Unfortunately, I didn't have that many healing items, and although I had a lot of extra knives at my disposal, I was kinda worried that the double Gigantes would eat through most of them during the battle. After all, the first Gigante I fought nearly used up my entire knife, and that baby was fully upgraded all the way back then. Would this really be possible? Lewis and I moved ahead. Because some massive boulder was in our way, we had to make a detour through the nearby mine, and there, we were reunited with one man. A man that had wanted my ass more than anything else in the world.
Oh my god!
He was furious about me having kicked his butt all the way back in the village, and he was ready to get his revenge. Ain't no way I was gonna let him have his way with me that easily, though. I ran up to the control room, pulled the switch before Mamma Mia could get me, and flew out of there. Waiting for the bridge was a bit sketchy, but come on, you guys know me. It was easy. I made sure to make eye contact with that joke of a man as I pushed my way past him. And so, we'd made it to the part I'd been dreading since about a minute ago. I wasn't ready. In fact, I was completely terrified. But you know what? Lewis had faith in me. I felt better already. Oh, Jesus Christ! Help me! Oh, sweet Jesus, I don't want to die! Thankfully, Lewis was able to save me before I got crushed. But then, another giant emerged from the heavens, and it was none other than El Monkey. I couldn't believe my damn eyes. Hadn't I disposed of him back in the village? What the hell was going on here? Whatever the case, it looked like it was going to be a 2v2. I immediately went for the monkey, getting to work by spanking him with my fly swatter. It didn't take me long to realize that the guy actually seemed to be enjoying it. So changing up my strategy, I went for his nutsack instead. Having the guy's monkey balls drag across my face wasn't the greatest feeling in the world, but we all got to sacrifice something if we intend to succeed, right? It was a price I was more than willing to pay. Wait, no, that sounded wrong. After giving the massive monkey a few more slaps and quickly defeating him, it was onto the armored one, and this guy was a major problem. He was armored everywhere. His balls, his hands, even his toes. The guy actually had toe armor. Still, I didn't let that deter me. Even when Lewis abandoned me to go find some dynamite, even as I got my ass handed to me like it was just another Tuesday, I didn't give up. The fight went on for a while, with me being completely stuck in a never-ending loop of getting crushed, when all of a sudden, I discovered a blessing. The Gigante can actually take damage to the face, meaning he is technically able to be beaten knife only. But that's only if you live in the land of make-believe with unicorns and rainbows and all that, okay? Of all of this guy's insane attacks, I only found one where you can successfully poke him with your knife, and that's when he does this big growl move. During it, he actually lowers his head enough so that you can get a hit in, but number one, this move is super rare and inconsistent. Number two, successfully getting hits off without hitting his armor requires the accuracy of a goddamn surgeon. And number three, good luck surviving long enough to slowly whittle him down to 0 HP. It just ain't happening, Chief. Even I, the man who once did the same boss fight for 9 hours straight, refused to battle against this absolute insanity. I just dumped the guy in the lava. Next up was the minecart section, and when I realized what was about to happen, my heart dropped. I was forced to shoot. There's just no getting around it. Sitting there and hoping that Lewis would actually do something useful always ended in our deaths. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Big Smoke literally came out of nowhere and tried to get his long-awaited revenge. Unfortunately for him though, I wasn't just gonna let him bully me and my weirdly dressed friend. It was a long, tense battle, and at one point, I was a little afraid that Lewis and I were gonna eat the dust. But then, Big Smoke's minecart imploded in on itself, sending that gluttonous monster into the deepest recesses of the 7 hells. Good luck ordering your number 9s now, Smoke! Our minecart reached the end of the line. Lewis and I jumped out like action heroes, and it was on to yet another bug section. Yeah, all I really did here was run as fast as I could without looking back. At one point, I thought that Lewis might have been dragged into one of the bug's mating nests because, you know, with those huge antennas on his head, he was sure to be confused for one of them. But thankfully, he got through that section a-okay. We hitched a ride on some elevator and made our way to the surface. It was then my opinion of Lewis changed. See, when I first came in contact with the guy, I saw him as a complete freak, a perverted weirdo. I mean, who dresses like that? He clearly had something wrong with him. But as we talked, as we recited our traumatic life stories to each other, I came to understand him. Like me, Lewis was a man searching for something important to him. Something he couldn't live without. What he was searching for was acceptance. This confused me. Acceptance for what? His costume? Wait, no. The villagers had forced Lewis to wear that costume in an effort to ridicule him. It couldn't be that. So then, what else? Before Lewis could give me his answer, the elevator arrived at our destination and we pressed on. I made a mistake. I let my guard down. I thought Lewis and I were safe. So of course, that was when we finally met Krauser.
Long time no see, rookie. Major Krauser? What the hell?
By God, Lewis wasn't kidding. Krauser's hog was unapologetically flapping in the wind. Why the hell was he naked? Was this some kind of tactical advantage? A distraction, perhaps? Or did he plan to use his 11-inch schlong as a weapon in battle? I didn't know the answer to these questions, but what I did know was that if I wanted to live, I need to fight for my life. Thankfully, because it was dark in there and I was wearing some pretty heavy-duty sunglasses, his German sausage didn't distract me too badly, but man, trying to keep track of his slinging meat and his knife at the same time was a struggle. Like Neo, I desperately tried to avoid his meat helicopter as we fought, because the moment that massive slob of pepperoni touched my knees, I'd be tapping out. Ain't no way was world domination worth having Krauser's little Peter brush against me in the heat of battle. Krauser then kicked me to the deck below, and as he front flipped over me, I couldn't help but watch in horror as his shriveled up little ballsack danced in the wind. As traumatic as it was to witness, it was also sort of angelic in a way.
We are just getting started, rookie.
No! Stay away from me! Somebody help me! He's naked! Oh god! During our battle, I tried reasoning with Krauser. I told him that the cult he was a part of was brainwashing him and that he didn't need to fight me with his wiener hanging out. But Krauser denied me, saying that this was his choice. He wanted me to see his prized possession. It was all part of his plan to convert me over to their side. Holding back my urge to throw up, I fought that man with everything I had. And of course, I only aimed for his short sword. Was it underhanded? Yeah. Was I exploiting his only weakness? Sure. But you know what? I didn't care. The faster I could get Krauser's little partner out of my sight, the better. It was the only spot I could reliably hit. The one area Krauser left unguarded, and I wasn't about to start fighting honorably now. In case you didn't understand a word of what I just said, I slapped his meat around with my fly swatter. But then, all of a sudden, I lost. With the way Krauser looked at me as he came closer, I knew there was only one thought on his mind. He wanted me. And he was prepared to cut my clothes off by force if he had to. Before he could do that, though, Lewis clutched out a last-minute save, and Krauser had no choice but to retreat. He told me that he'd get me next time, whenever my little weirdo of a boyfriend wasn't there to protect me. And just like that, he was gone. Well, my eyes were gonna need some bleaching, but who cared about that? Lewis was dying, and I had to make sure he was okay. I limped over to him and asked him if there was anything I could do. And that was when Lewis told me that he hadn't been truthful with me. I raised an eyebrow, confused. What was he talking about? He'd been lying to me? Lewis then grabbed my hand, pulled me in close, and told me the truth he'd kept hidden since the very beginning. The costume he was wearing, the ridiculous getup that would make even the kindest soul in the world point and laugh at him, was never forced on him by the villagers. No, that wasn't the case at all. The truth was that Lewis had shown up to the village wearing it of his own volition, because that was just who he was, a little flamboyant alien boy. As Lewis pulled out his last cigarette, he told me that in the end, he never did find anyone who'd been willing to accept him for who he was. No. In the end, it'd all been a waste of time, the dream of an utter fool. But I disagreed. There was one man who'd finally come to accept Lewis's moronic outfit. One man who had vowed to stand by him through thick and thin, even though he was embarrassed to be seen with him. And that man was me. In those last moments, it looked as if an overwhelming sense of peace washed over Lewis. And just like that, he was gone. He may not have had the happiest of lives, but I'd like to think that at the end of it all, I'd at least given him a little bit of happiness. Of course, in my head, I thought his outfit was stupid looking, and I'd only said those nice things because he was on his deathbed. But I still couldn't help but feel good about myself. I was such a good person. I said goodbye to my dear friend, and I continued on in search of Krauser. He was gonna pay for this. Next up on my plate was the elevator section, and though I was a little worried about it, the collection of fish I had in my inventory would surely be enough to make my way through it in one piece. Getting to the elevator itself wasn't such a big deal. Sure, the IKEA shieldmen were a bit of an issue, and Ramon's fire trap was kind of a pain since I wasn't able to destroy it, but overall, I'd say I did pretty well here. When I finally got to the elevator, I quickly realized that I'd forgotten about one key detail about all of this. There were going to be archers pelting me with arrows, and I had absolutely no way to fight back. I was essentially a sitting duck. And because I couldn't take out Mr. Alia Las Plagas, I'd be fighting an insane amount of little alien boys. Dear Lord, please have mercy on me. It seemed my only option was to use a good old Nike strat to avoid the arrows until I started getting jumped by the boys above. When that inevitably happened, I'd try my best to take the Plagas out as quickly as possible, and then I'd come out on the other side victorious. This didn't work at all. Not only was I being slapped around like an abused housewife, I was also getting cheap-shotted by arrows before I could even do anything about it. Add on to that the fact that I literally had 0 body armor left, and holy Christ, this was way too much for me to handle. Something needed to change. So instead of trying to run through the clock tower like a maniac, I decided to take out all of the people in my way first, headed back to the merchant and had my vest repaired, and then went back for round 2. I didn't know if a full vest would be enough to survive this time, but it was my only solution. Of course, I did have 4 first aid sprays waiting for me in the typewriter if I really needed them, but I was planning to save those for Salazar, so they were off limits. With a prayer and a hope, I hopped back onto the elevator, did my very best to avoid taking damage, and somehow, some way, I actually made it out alive. As it turns out, repairing the vest was critical to me surviving. This was it, the final battle of the castle, and the one reason I'd been saving up every single knife I'd collected on my journey. Ramon Salazar waited for me just up ahead, and he was a thick boy, desperately waiting for my fly swatter to slap him around. Was I truly ready to face him? Would I emerge from that fight successful, or did my dreams of world domination end here? There was only one way to find out. So, preparing as much as I could, I walked through those castle doors and confronted the little man myself. He told me that Krauser had taken the Amber and Ada over to the military island, and that if I wanted a chance to get them back, I'd have to get through him. He then fell backwards into the endless abyss, and a few moments later, emerged as a revolting creature that kind of looked like this boy right here. I moved into action immediately, aiming for Ramon's face as often as I could, but honestly, even hitting his body was a-okay with me. The thing is, not only did Ramon have a ridiculous amount of health, he also took out almost all of my health with a single attack and would even insta-kill me if I wasn't careful. This battle was truly a test of skill, patience, and knowledge, and I suffered a lot as I tried my best to navigate its tricky waters. I stabbed, I ducked, I got stunned, and then my body armor was taken from me like candy from a baby. I was now bare-assed and defenseless, and Ramon took full advantage of it. Of course, I kept going. There was still so much that needed to be done before I allowed myself to be defeated. I needed to get revenge for Lewis, I needed to save Ada and bring her home, and most importantly, I needed to retrieve the Amber for my future plan. I refused to let everything end here, but there was a big problem. Ramon's insta-kill kept getting me. No matter what I did, no matter what I tried, I just couldn't avoid it. I died again and again and again, each time doing worse than the last attempt. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. This went on for a while. Me making good progress, me misjudging Ramon's attack, and then inevitably getting eaten. I was at a total loss. Or at least, I thought I was. As it turns out, there is a way to dodge that slimy boy's insta-kill, and although it was not easy, it made the fight doable. With my new knowledge gained, I fought, this time with confidence. My fly swatter degraded in durability as the battle went on, and whenever I could, I'd use my extra knives to stab Ramon in the face. Minutes passed by as I endlessly dodged slime attack after slime attack. I slapped that freak around any chance I could get, and as this unending battle continued to push me to my very limits, I started to worry about my fly swatter. It was on the verge of breaking. What would happen when I lost the power and speed of my only good weapon? Would my collection of baby knives even be enough to finish Ramon off? Before that could happen, though, I had won. Yeah, baby! Suck on these, Ramon! The moment I'd been stressing over since first stepping foot into the village all those hours ago was finally behind me. Salazar was defeated, and all that stood between me and world domination was some naked psychopath. I actually had a chance to do this. High on the fumes of victory, I made my way to the docks underneath the castle, and there, I saw a familiar face. Ah, great. I had no choice but to take the boat over to the island with her. I still didn't know what she wanted, but to be fair, it didn't really matter. As long as her goals had nothing to do with the Amber or Ada, it wasn't any of my concern. Bella tried making small talk with me, talking about the old days when things were more simple. She was clearly trying to break through the wall I'd erected around myself after our breakup, and I didn't appreciate that one bit. I told her to shut her damn mouth and that nothing she said could fix what she'd done. Burning someone else's pizza pockets was unforgivable, and frankly, the fact that she was trying to defend it was childish. Bella smirked to herself and said that I was the one being immature. Was this bitch for real? We parted ways shortly after making it to the island, thank God, and what lay before me was mesmerizing. Somewhere, deep within the confines of this compound, was a naked man eagerly waiting for me to show up to the party. It didn't exactly make me want to move forward with the journey, but the unfortunate truth was that I'd have to face him sooner or later if I wanted to achieve my goals. However, things were different now. The enemies had guns, and the only thing I had to defend myself with was my fly swatter. Because of this, I tried my best to sneak into the first compound and stealth kill enemies as I went, but this didn't work for very long. Realizing I had zero chance against the machine gun guy, I booked it. I was even able to take a shortcut as one of the crossbowers got destroyed by a turret, so that was pretty cool. Anyway, making it through that in one piece was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and after a few more kerfuffles here and there, I found myself at the entrance to the regenerator room. I wasn't exactly sure how I'd get through this area with only a fly swatter, but I mean, even if I had guns to use, I couldn't really do much until I had the thermal scope, right? So yeah, I just kind of did my best to get out of there without taking too much damage. Everything was going fine, and I was making some good progress. But then, tragedy struck. I arrived at the regenerator testing lab, and I had no idea who had the wrench. It could have been anyone, and I couldn't exactly put the biosensor scope on my fly swatter, right? So, what then? Did I just collapse onto the floor and start blubbering like a baby? Well, no. The solution to this problem was actually really simple. See, not to brag or anything, but I was a bit of a rich boy. Since I had so much disposable income at the ready, I headed back over to the merchant, bought the Stingray, and mounted the scope on it. As long as I didn't shoot any of the regenerators with it, it didn't break any rules of the challenge. I was able to find out who the culprit was right away, and I immediately got to work. My first strategy was to just brute force the guy, but because I didn't know how to dodge his attacks, and I didn't feel like using up all of my healing items on a single enemy, I decided that going for the window strat was my best option. Basically, I just cheesed him. I mean, look at this. The guy just shimmies his way through the window without any regard for his safety at all, letting me go to town on him as much as I want. This fight was completely free. All I had to do after that was wait for the keycard to be printed, and I was out of there. As I pushed on through that sanctuary, something off to the side caught my eye. That wasn't who I thought it was it? For some reason, I questioned it, but my eyes weren't deceiving me. It was Ada, all right. And she was all by herself in a cell, knocked unconscious. My instincts told me to leave her behind, to go secure the amber and to forget about that useless moron. Bringing her along with me would only result in a disaster like it did every other time before it. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Something inside of me wouldn't let it happen. Why? Why couldn't I just look the other way? I didn't understand it. And so, in a lapse of judgment, I found myself charging into her room and waiting until she regained consciousness. Thankfully, it didn't take her long to wake up, and she thanked me for saving her. In that moment, she confessed that she was afraid I was going to leave her behind, and that she was positive I only cared about the amber. I was a man who didn't let anything stand between me and my goals. And yet, there I was, sitting by her bedside, protecting her from the evil men on the island. I mean, I did only care about the amber. That was the whole reason for my being there. Saving Ada was just an optional side quest. It meant nothing to me, not a damn thing. But as she looked at me with genuine gratitude in her eyes, I couldn't help but feel like I'd made the right decision. Even if I wasn't able to acquire the amber at this point, even if world domination somehow slipped its way through my fingers, did I really care? Either way, I offered her my hand, welcoming her to the team once again. We continued on the search for the amber together. Everything after that point became significantly easier. It was as if I was fighting with a new strength. I took out enemy after enemy without breaking a sweat, and Ada got through section after section like it was nothing. Of course, I still had to keep an eye on my limited healing items since I was still expecting to fight Krauser and Sadler, but honestly, I wasn't afraid anymore. I had gained some self-confidence ever since beating Salazar back at the castle, and I was now convinced that nobody could stop me. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about the spiky boy? Well, we were actually able to outmaneuver the guy and opened up the door before he was able to catch us. It was a very close call, but everything worked out in the end. Then, we got to the bridge section, and I was sweating. Was this actually going to be possible without guns? I mean, I needed to protect Ada through the bars in order for her to not get kidnapped, right? Or at the very least, I'd have to throw a flash. But no, this part is completely doable if you just haul it to the bridge the moment the lever is lowered. The boys who were threatening my girl were taken out. I solved the puzzle that either takes me 2 seconds or 2 hours, and Ada and I found ourselves at the wrecking ball room. Well, this was gonna suck. Could I have thrown 2 grenades at the wall and skipped the whole section in no time flat? Sure. Was I that much of a coward? Hell no. I went in there with my butt cheeks fully exposed, fought those men with every ounce of strength in my body, and bided my time until Ada was able to secure our escape route. Sometimes I got hit by enemies, sometimes I got hit by her, and sometimes I got absolutely annihilated out of nowhere. Death after death came at me, and it seemed I was going the right way for a smack bottom. The problem with the wrecking ball room is that there's just too many damn enemies. Yeah, I could probably brute force my way through them with enough heals, but that wasn't a luxury I could afford at the time. Pair this with Ada screaming for my help every 2 seconds, and this whole area was a recipe for disaster. I did end up finding a strat where I stayed on top of one of the containers and slapped the enemies around as they came up, but this wasn't super effective. Still, it was my only option. So for the next hour, this was all I did. But it wasn't working. I just kept failing and failing and failing. It was way too much for me to handle. That was when I had a brilliant idea. What if I got one of the dynamite guys to weaken the wall for Ada? I wasn't sure if it would work, but there was no harm in giving it a try. And behold! It didn't work. I even tried baiting the rocket launcher guys into shooting it, and it literally did nothing. Yeah, there's only one way to reliably make it by the section, and that's to defeat a certain amount of enemies. Surprisingly, the section isn't actually timed, so I can't just keep a zombie crawler on me at the end of a round so Ada can bust her way through. I was gonna have to do this the hard way. I grinded and grinded and grinded. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. I had an entire family, lived a happy, fulfilling life, and then on my deathbed, I finally did it. The Wrecking Ball section was completed, and I legitimately wanted to die. Someone please help me. With 3 hours of my life down the drain, Ada and I climbed aboard the lift and made our way into the next room, where Ada got kidnapped yet again. Brother, why do you want her so badly? Well, actually, I know why, but still, I had enough, okay? Enough was enough. I didn't know who the hell this new guy was or what his goals were, but I didn't care. It was clear that he needed to die if Ada and I were gonna get off this island in one piece, and so I chased after them. Unfortunately, though, a major distraction came my way in the form of one thick-ass boy. God damn! Son, who taught you how to make scrumptious pastries like those? Oh, it even smelled like what Mama used to make. I was tempted to take a bite. Oh! I didn't even touch you, okay? Calm down. Like I said, enough was enough. I pushed forward, did some money transactions, and finally came face to face with the man I've been searching for since the castle, Major Krauser. And, oh, thank God, he had pants on this time. It was a miracle. I definitely didn't do that just to make editing easier. No, that's not what happened at all. In that moment, I confronted Krauser. I told him about how good of a guy Lewis was, and that even though he dressed up like a weirdo, he didn't deserve to die. But that was when everything flipped on its head. Krauser told me that he never cared about Lewis or the Amber or any of it. He wasn't here for any sort of mission or greater purpose. No, he only cared about one thing, and one thing only: my attention. You see, he was obsessed with me. Every aspect of the way I carried myself was perfect in Krauser's eyes. That charming smile, the way I constantly put myself in danger for another, my thick ass. He wanted it all. I was terrified. In an attempt to avoid any potential conflict, I told Krauser that I didn't swing that way and that my thick ass was my own property. And oh boy, was that ever the wrong decision, because Krauser got angry and said that if he couldn't have me, nobody could. Realizing I hadn't picked the correct line of dialogue for this little encounter, I prepared myself for a grueling battle. Because I'd be fighting Krauser multiple times during this section and I didn't have any access to the merchant during it, I started off by using the weak knives I'd collected throughout my adventure. But there was only one problem. They were slow, weak, and I was running through them faster than a drug addict runs through bags of meth. Krauser was a tough opponent, and he didn't make things easy. However, the thought of becoming his little plaything pushed my body to new extremes. There was no way in hell I was gonna lose to him. After a few tries, I was able to beat the guy, but sadly, it came at the cost of my entire tactical vest. I was essentially as defenseless as a newborn baby now. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Krauser's traps were at knee level, and I had no better way of getting by them than just voluntarily throwing my body into them. My life sucked. Thankfully, I was able to limp my way all the way over to Krauser's little death pit, and it was there we had our second to last fight. In a pathetic attempt to capture me like a Pokemon, he threw 2 Pokeballs at me, but I wasn't stupid enough to fall for that. I mean, I had 3 charms in my attached case. Come on, Krauser. I know how that stuff works. This fight wasn't any different from the first one. I used my weak knives, avoided taking as much damage as humanly possible, and came out the other side victorious. I was in serious mode. Our final confrontation was coming up next, and to be honest, I was feeling a little nervous. Would my fly swatter actually be enough to fight back? Or would this be the end of the line for me? Either way, I wouldn't find out until I tried. So I climbed that ladder and began the battle. Krauser was a tough boy, and I was struggling a lot. He'd slice me, he'd try to crush my head, and he'd even try to kick me off the side of the cliff. Every move he had was just so quick, and I was having the hardest time avoiding any of them. I really didn't have enough heals for this. I failed again and again and again, each time having to restart that last battle because there was no typewriter to use in between. My patience was worn extremely thin, and the more times I tried, the further from victory I seemed to get. Many times throughout the battle, I considered throwing up the white flag and accepting my role as his new pet. It didn't seem like such a bad life, really. A constant supply of food, a warm place to sleep, and an endless supply of hugs and kisses. But no, I couldn't let that happen. Not when I was so close to victory. Not when I had people depending on me. I pushed on, going further than even I thought possible. I fought that man with every fiber in my body. I was merciless, dodging attacks, going in for the slaps, and learning his patterns as I went. Using nearly all of the strength available in my body, I gave that psychopath one final slap and his body collapsed on the spot. And then, it was finally over. As I stood over Krauser's pathetic excuse of an existence, I couldn't help but laugh on the inside. This was what I was so afraid to fight? This man, who barely even qualified as a worm? It was a joke. All that was left to do was to get revenge for my man Lewis. Like a little rat, Krauser tried to beg for his life, apologizing for everything he'd done, but it was too late for that. Did he show Lewis mercy when he stabbed him in the back? His thick hog swaying in the wind? No, he didn't. He didn't care, and neither did I. So, I picked up that knife, took careful aim, and plunged it deep into Krauser's heart. A certain peace came over me as the debt I'd sworn to repay was lifted from my shoulders. Lewis had finally been avenged. All that lay before me was the Amber and Ada. I had no time to waste. Although my journey was quickly coming to an end, I thought I'd mention that I now had Krauser's knife as well as my fly swatter, and this baby was insane. Yeah, it wasn't as quick as my fly swatter, but what it lacked in speed, it made up for in pure power. It was kind of sad that I had to wait that long to get a new upgrade. I mean, I literally hadn't been able to improve my gear since the very first Owl Monkey fight, but hey, better late than never. With 2 extremely powerful knives now in my possession, I didn't have to worry about anything anymore. The next area went by in the blink of an eye. Mike came in clutch and defended me when I needed it, and I used every single strategy I could think of. Of course, there were a lot of enemies to deal with, but I seemed to get through it all right. I did end up having to use the Gatling gun on the anti-aircraft turret though, so that kind of sucked. I continued on, taking out enemy after enemy, pulling lever after lever, and eventually meeting Mike in a deserted ruin. Everything looked great, and I was excited to get to know the guy better. But then he was attacked. All I could do was watch helplessly as Mike crash landed into the background. And like a demon, Sadler emerged from the flames. Mike's death was his fault. It was at that moment I swore I'd have Sadler's head on a stick before leaving the island. I fought off the bugs, made my way through yet another military section, and came across what I'd been searching for. And no, it wasn't the Amber. It was Ada. There she was, lying wide awake on some ritualistic altar, just asking for someone to save her. Yet, before I could, something in my body stopped me. It was the Los Polos disease inside of me, and Sadler himself had shown up to stop me. He told me that the world was his, not mine. He told me that Ada was his, not mine. It was then I learned that Sadler shared the same goals as me, and the fact that I was trying to steal his dreams right out from under him was unforgivable in his eyes. So, in just a mere few moments, he'd be converting me to his side, and then I'd be completely under his control. My mind would belong to him, and like Krauser, he was planning to keep me as his pet. As sad as I was to admit it, it looked like everything was over. I had no control of my body, and there was no one there to save me. I had lost. Oh my god, it was Bella! She went out of her way to save me? I couldn't believe it. I thought she wanted me dead after that whole Pizza Pocket incident. But as it turned out, she did still care about me after all. Hell yeah, man. Before I could thank her, though, she told me to get out of there. So I grabbed Ada's semi-conscious body, made my way into a side room, and after looking at some map on the wall, it seemed there was a laboratory nearby. We were so close. There was an issue, though. Ada wasn't doing so well. Just look at her. It was clear I needed to hurry. So I made my way forward, trying my best to carry that thick woman without breaking my back. I struggled through hallucination after hallucination, and then, after unlocking some massive metal doors, we were in. I placed Ada onto the operating table first and prayed that everything would be alright as the surgery got underway. At this point, I didn't even care if I got the Amber or not. In fact, finding it wasn't even a concern to me anymore. I just wanted Ada to be okay. The surgery started and she screamed in agony. It looked like the device was trying to shock the parasites out of her system, and because they were so close to maturity, the power needed to destroy them was immense. I tried my best to comfort her as she writhed in pain. Thankfully, the surgery only lasted 15 seconds before it was over, and from the looks of things, Ada was cured. Before I could say anything though, I fell over, with no strength left in my body. It seemed Los Polos had finally gotten to me, and I was just a few seconds too late. Oh well, I did my best. A few minutes later, I woke up in the surgery chair feeling better than ever. Ada came at me from the side and attacked me with a hug, telling me she was so glad I was alright. So, we'd really done it then? We'd cheated our deaths and were ready to leave the island once and for all? It all seemed so surreal. So much had happened, so much had gone wrong, and yet, there we were, still alive and kicking. All we had to do now was find a boat. But of course, Ada was confused. She asked me if I was able to get my hands on the Amber. Wasn't that the whole reason I'd come here? No. I'd already retrieved what I came here to get. We were ready to go. Ada and I continued through that old ruin and eventually made our way to the merchant. I made sure everything was up to spec, I bought as many healing items as I could carry, and I said goodbye to my dear friend for the last time. It was an honor to have done business with him, and I let him know that I couldn't have gotten this far without him. As we made our way back over to the dock, something caught my eye. Oh, It was Bella! She'd been captured by that disgusting bald cult leader. As much as I despised her, I couldn't just allow Sadler to keep her as his little plaything, so I told Ada to stay back as I went in to save her. Of course, because I didn't care about her that much, in order to free her, I shut the rope that was holding her and just let her fall to the ground without bothering to catch her. Serves her right. It wasn't gonna be that easy though. Sadler showed up like the boogeyman, and after deciding that the best course of action was to split up, the final battle was underway. I chose to use Krauser's knife first before finishing the guy off with my fly swatter. I had no idea how much health he had, and to be honest, I didn't even know where to hit the guy. But I thought as long as I saw blood coming out, I was doing just fine. The bugs spawning during the midpoint did make this fight a lot more difficult than it needed to be, and Sadler's goo attacks were no joke. But overall, this fight was super easy? Huh? I was flabbergasted. I was gobsmacked. All it took to beat Sadler was half of Krauser's knife? Are you kidding me? Why did they only give me the god knife at the end? Hello? In a last-ditch effort to end me, Sadler turned into an embryo and used his tentacles on me like I was some pesky fly. The roles had reversed, and I finally understood what it felt like to be on the receiving end of a fly swatter. I didn't like it. That was when Bella came in clutch and tossed me a red rocket launcher. I would have loved to go over and stab Sadler's itty-bitty body with my knife, but because that was impossible, I had no choice but to use what Bella had gifted me. And just like that, the nightmare was finally over. As I lay on that metal grating, exhausted from everything that had happened over the last few hours, I noticed that the vial of amber was just within my arm's reach. Well, that's convenient. Before I could grab it though, Bella got to it first. She snatched it right out from under me and thanked me for all my help. She told me that the world was now hers and that, if I wanted, I could join her. After all, we had a long history, and together, we'd be unstoppable. But all I could do was laugh. I wasn't particularly interested in world domination anymore. No. There were some things that were more important than that. I don't think Bella agreed with me on that, but either way, she didn't stop me. She hopped onto her helicopter and told me that if I ever changed my mind, she'd be waiting. She tossed me the keys to her little pet, and just like that, she was gone. Ada caught up to me at that point and told me we didn't have much time. The island was exploding all over the place and there was no boat in sight. So, following the only path that we could see, we headed deep underground. We ran as fast as we could, avoiding danger after danger as we desperately looked for a way to escape. And as if our prayers had been answered, we came across, Pokemon? What the hell? Is this what Bella meant by pet? I mean, okay. We hopped on that Lapras, zoomed our way through the collapsing underground tunnels, and emerged from the exit with only 3 seconds left to spare. After everything we had been through, the brutal fights, the kidnappings, the rescues, the friends we'd lost along the way, it looked like we were finally safe. Ada asked me what I was going to do now. The amber was still out there somewhere, and she was sure that if we worked together, we could get it back. It wasn't too late, but I just smiled and told her that we had other things to worry about. Of course, Ada raised an eyebrow at this, not quite understanding what I meant, but I knew she'd come to understand eventually. As Ada and I looked out towards the setting sun, I couldn't help but feel like I'd made the right choice. Sure, I'd let a guaranteed world domination slip through my fingertips and would most likely never get a chance like that ever again, but that didn't matter to me. I didn't need it anymore. Revving up the Lapras, I headed out into the endless ocean together with my partner, never once looking back at the nightmare that loomed behind us.